Well, it's my first video of the new year, so yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. John Wick. Now, John Wick came out in 2014, which this now being 2024 makes it 10 years old. And John Wick is not only the movie franchise that brought Keanu Reeves back into popular culture in a big way, but it's also the movie that kind of brought back the classic 80s or 90s rated R action movie that has kind of fallen into obscurity, and John Wick is the perfect movie to do that with because it's a surprisingly simple premise pulled off with fantastic stunts. And if this 10-year-old franchise has taught us anything, it's that combination just works for these movies. And having seen all 4 John Wick movies, and I will be talking about them all this month, so stay tuned for those, I was kind of surprised just how simple and stripped back this first John Wick movie was. Because at this point, they didn't have all the lore figured out yet with the Continental and the High Table and all the rules and regulations and practices that we would come to understand better in the subsequent movies. Here, it is very straightforward. You have John Wick, played by Keanu Reeves, and he's the #1 hitman of all time. He's the guy that you go in to mess dudes up, to get the job done, and he was so efficient, he was at the top of his game, but then he wanted out because he fell in love, he got married, he wanted the simple life. And so he made a deal with some Russians that if he killed a bunch of dudes, then he would get his ticket to paradise. But as it happens in all of these types of movies, his paradise doesn't last very long because his wife dies of cancer. And this is really where we pick up in the beginning of the movie. The wife has died and has left him with this dog called Daisy. It's a little beagle. And at first, John isn't too thrilled about this dog, but he realizes the dog is exceptionally trained, but he ends up kind of being friends, and it kind of picks him up out of this depression that we find him in at the very beginning. And for a brief moment, it seems like, okay, maybe he'll move past his grief. Maybe he'll actually find a fulfilling life with this dog. Yeah, well, if you know what kind of movie this is, you know that that doesn't happen either, because you have Theon Greyjoy, who's this Russian prince. I'm gonna call him a Russian prince. He's the son of the head Russian mafia dude that John used to work for. And if you thought Theon Greyjoy was a bit too unlikable in Game of Thrones, well then you're really not gonna like him here, because he bumps into John Wick at a gas station and is asking how much for the car, and John says it's not for sale, and that kind of ticks him off. So later that night, him and his boys show up at John's house, they steal the car, they kill his dog, and they don't treat John too good either. They mess him up a little bit. He's not seriously injured, but they did get the jump on him, and John's out of practice, so he's allowed to slip up here and there. And I always thought it was interesting that they took the car and they killed the dog, because very early in the movie you realize that the car is his most valuable possession, and even when the dog shows up, it's still all about his car. That's his life. That's his thing that he has that he can control. So when they attack him and now he's out for revenge, you kind of assume that he's really upset about them taking his car, but he's not. The thing he's actually upset about is the killing of his dog, which as a dog person myself I can relate to. But above that, it's such a wholesome motivation that I think everybody can get behind on. Whether you're a dog person or not, you understand that that was the thing that was given to him by his dead wife, and that was his hope for a future, that he could love again, that there was optimism, and that's just gone. And now John's gonna kill a whole bunch of people. And it's from here where the movie really kicks into high gear, because John takes a sledgehammer to his garage floor and he unearths all of his old guns and tokens for the Continental and his resources, everything that he had put away and buried hoping to never need again. He has just unearthed all of that and all the rage and revenge that comes with it. And from here on out, it is a straight up revenge quest. He is going after the dumb Russian prince that killed his dog and anybody that stands in his way. And a lot of people stand in his way, because the head Russian dude, Vigo, he's actually in kind of a tight spot because he doesn't want his son to die, but he also knows that his son made probably the biggest mistake anybody could ever make in upsetting John Wick. So the mob boss in him just wants to hand over his son for the sake of the greater good and stability and peace. But also, it is his son, and he does actually kind of care about his son, so he is going to protect him to the detriment of all of the Russians that he just sends out to be killed by John Wick. And Keanu Reeves' performance here as John Wick is probably his greatest performance of all time, because you really do understand his pain and his grief with very minimal dialogue. He doesn't say a lot. He is the strong, silent type, the person who gets across his point more through action and the barrel of a gun than dialogue. And I think that approach really does play to Keanu Reeves' strengths, because he is a very physical actor. When he has to do the stunts and he has to do the choreography, he sells it 100%. And let's be honest, Keanu Reeves is not the strongest dramatic actor. In some of his more dramatic roles, let's just say he's not the best. He's not bad, and I do have a soft spot for almost every Keanu Reeves movie I've ever seen. I don't think he's a bad actor. Let's just say that as a leading man, his acting range is a bit limited. But here, that really isn't a problem. If anything, it helps the story because he doesn't speak a lot, and the direction and storytelling is all visual. It's all telling you what you need to know in any given scene, any motivation through visual acting and visual performance and visual stunt work and cinematography. All the things that just make great filmmaking. But really, the thing that carries this movie, even more so than Keanu's performance, is the stunts, the gunplay, the gun fu as they call it, which is a combination of Kali martial arts and jiu-jitsu, and probably a smattering of other styles thrown in there for good measure. But regardless, it is absurdly entertaining to watch, and seeing Keanu Reeves get back into it, and he doesn't get back into it perfectly. He does slip up, he does get stabbed, and he gets shot a couple times, but needless to say, the dude has still got it in the action department. You watch him clear a room, seeing him handle guns with the best form and trigger discipline and just basic gun use that I've ever seen in a Hollywood movie. Usually Hollywood movies, the actors have no idea how to use a gun. Keanu moves and acts like he knows how to use a gun, and he's so efficient with it too. It is crazy the sheer amount of creativity and ingenuity that the stunt coordinators put into all these fight scenes, incorporating both guns and hand-to-hand combat in the same fight. It is so impressive, and even though going back to this first movie, it is kind of standard, the fight scenes don't go as big or as intricate as some of the later movies go, but what they're able to pull off here is so impressive because it looks great on film. Like, it looks exciting, it looks like there's a lot of kinetic energy, it looks great on camera, but it also looks believable. It looks like these people actually know how to fight, they actually know how to shoot, and that they're actually trained in the job that they're supposed to be, which is professional hitmen. But even though the action is really the star of the show, this movie does have some great supporting characters too that I kind of forgot were in here. Obviously, you have Ian McShane as Winston. He's the owner of this Continental Hotel, which is kind of just the neutral ground, the safe haven for all these contract killers that are part of this underground organization. They can all stay here, but they can't conduct any business on the premises without incurring some fatal consequences. And that's really interesting, and while we don't get a lot more than that in this movie, it is really cool to see how the subsequent movies have built on that and really expanded what that means as underground network. And Ian McShane is perfect in this role. He plays basically the same character that he played in the HBO series Deadwood. If you've ever seen that, you know exactly what to expect from this type of character. And we do see some other assassins that John Wick knows, like Willem Dafoe plays an assassin friend of his that was at his wife's funeral, and they kind of kept in touch, but not really, and the Russians want him to kill John Wick. They put a contract out, and business is business, it's not personal. And Willem Dafoe is perfect casting here because he tends to always play the bad guys, or at least guys that you can't really trust. He always has this edge to him. And Willem Dafoe plays that up here. You don't really know if you can trust him throughout this whole movie. But the aspect that I really do believe is the key to why this franchise took off in the way it did, aside from all the other really important things that helped this movie succeed, like the actors, like the stunt work, like the revenge quest that everybody can get behind, and the super simple premise. But something that people don't really talk about is the world that they created for John Wick and all the other characters to inhabit. It's such an inherently cool universe, even though we only really see this one city, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be New York City. It feels like it was modeled after it, but they don't really say what city it is, which is kind of cool, because in the same way the city from Seven could just be any city, this city from John Wick could also just be any city. Although I'm pretty sure later in the franchise it is made clear that it is supposed to be New York City. But I'm pretty sure in this movie it is left intentionally vague, which personally I prefer because it does have kind of a comic book graphic novel flair to it that is entirely all its own. John Wick isn't really based on anything except like The Raid, and that's only in the stunt work. That's not even really aesthetically what it's trying to be. But just seeing this window into the underground world of hitmen and the mafia and all these different factions that seem to be constantly at war with each other, and then you have the Continental, which is this establishment, and they have their own currency, and there's just such a great story there that again thankfully gets fleshed out in the later movies. But it's so cool to come back to this movie and see all the little touches that they really didn't have to put into this movie to make the city feel like a fully realized character in itself. Where I just can't wait to go back and watch the other ones and see how they continue to develop this world and these characters and the constant bad guys that are trying to take out John Wick for something. And I guess that's all I have to say for the first John Wick movie. Again, it's a very simple story. It's a revenge quest. He goes after this Russian kid that killed his dog. But it's the execution of it that is really where this movie soars. Everything is firing on all cylinders. Everybody's at the top of their game in the production of this movie, that it really does come across as one of those action masterpieces that you could just pop on and just be so impressed that they're actually able to do it on camera practically. Again, there's not a lot of CGI or any kind of digital wizardry going on. This is all in-camera practical stunts, and yeah, there's a reason why they made 3 more of these and continued to make money. But I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you think about John Wick, the first one? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. As always, I'm Colby. This is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.